Joining us live on the couch, Carly Fiorina, running for President of the United States. Terrible.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible. And of course, President Obama immediately steps up and calls for gun control, as does Hillary Clinton, knowing virtually nothing about the attack at that point.
What would a President Fiorina say following this attack?
That we need to pray for the victims of this shooting attack, that everything points to a terrorist attack, a homegrown terrorist attack, such as the FBI director has been warning us about. Our own FBI director said recently that the FBI was, quote, overwhelmed by the number of Islamist extremist suspects in the U.S. today.
Sure. You said, as a president,
pray.
you would say pray. The New York Daily News today is taking Republicans to task for the fact that Ted Cruz yesterday called for prayers, Lindsey Graham prayers, Paul Rand talked about Rand Paul, that is to say, prayers, and so did Paul Ryan.
Yes, and
all talking about that. And they say, God isn't fixing this. We need more laws, Carly.
Well, I was on Twitter and Facebook and Periscope last night in a live town hall, and I began by talking about this incident and began by asking everyone to pray. This is an example of how afraid the left wing is of our values. It's stunning to me.
Well, what about the headline last week on the Daily News after the shooting at the Planned Parenthood facility? Hate loaded the gun.
That's
trying to prove that Republicans, with a picture of you, were responsible for that.
Yes, and Chris Matthews, by the way, on MSNBC, said that this was my fault. He said that I was probably delighted by the shooting. There were people who said I have blood on my hands. The left wing is terrified of the truth, terrified of our values. And by the way, the left wing is terrified of me.
Right. Here's what Hillary Clinton said, and to get your response. She tweeted this out: I refuse to accept this as normal. We must take action to stop gun violence now.
Yeah, exactly.
No one expects it.
Let's immediately go out and call for gun control. It's all about their ideology, their prescriptions, government taking over for everything, for religion, for family, for common sense, for good judgment.
Well, let's think back to the Paris attack. France has got some of the most extreme gun control measures in the world, and yet they had the problem there. Let's say we had the same kind of gun controls here in the United States. What's to stop somebody from driving something across the Mexican border?
Exactly right. And we know in our own cases of mass shootings that, for example, the South Carolina mass shooting, it turns out that guy, Dylan Roof, should never have been sold a gun. He fell through the cracks. It turns out that South Carolina has very strict gun control laws. They didn't help. It turns out that all the violence in Chicago is sitting in a city with some of the strictest gun control laws. This isn't the answer. The answer is let's start by calling this crime what it appears to be.
What about soft targets, Mrs. Fiorina? How do you, should we be reducing the number of soft targets out there, and how would you do that?
Well, first we have to, as your previous guest indicated, we have to give the police the tools they need to fight this new and, unfortunately, apparently, increasingly present threat, and they don't always have the tools. And now is not the time to call for law-abiding citizens to put down their guns.
We're not done with this investigation.
No,
we're just starting it. But we know this. Devout Muslim, marries another Muslim, goes to Saudi Arabia to meet her, met her online, comes back with a 6-month-old. What type of new parents would drop their kid off at a grandmother and then go kill 15 people?
With GoPros.
With GoPros who want to be famous online in the afterlife. George Washington University released a study yesterday that we have 900 active investigations on ISIS people. This was not one of them.
That's right.
And they're most, all under 30, most have converted.
And that's why our FBI director said several weeks ago, before the Paris attacks, we are, quote, overwhelmed in this country
and we don't
by the
know what we don't know.
Suspects. And by the way, when a candidate such as myself and many other candidates say we cannot let more Syrian refugees in if we cannot vet them, when the House passes a perfectly common sense law, what does President Obama say? He says that we are providing a recruitment tool to the terrorists. You see, President Obama, Hillary Clinton, the rest of the left wing, they are concerned about the tone of our public rhetoric when they don't agree with it. But they're not concerned about the tone when President Obama basically calls a presidential candidate a recruitment tool for ISIS. It's unbelievable hypocrisy.
A moment ago you said we need to call it what it is. What is what happened out there?
Well, we can't prejudge the investigation, but it sure looks like Islamic extremism and terrorism to me. That's what it looks like. Now, we'll see what the FBI comes up with, but you have Muslims who clearly planned an attack. I think the only thing that's throwing the FBI off a little bit probably is the fact that this wasn't a suicide attack. This is a new kind of attack. These are people who clearly wanted to survive the attack.
Sure.
They were prepared to survive the attack. They were recording the attack. These are different tactics, but it sure looks like
However, by
That's also
saying so,
assuming
but-
that they wanted to.
sure looks like a
That's
duck.
also assuming that was their
Quack, quack.
end. They may have had something else in the
That's
works.
right.
We don't know
They
what their
might-
end number
you're
was,
right.
so perhaps we don't know.
Maybe they were going back to get those IEDs and blow up other
Right. I mean, to
facilities.
stay so close to the killing site 3 hours after.
That's right.
Is just
It was their apartment.
Yeah. Well, look, here's what we know. These are mass murderers who are Muslim and who have recently returned from Saudi Arabia. That's what we know.
Right.
So as your previous guest said, if it looks like a duck and quacks like a duck and sounds like a duck, maybe it's a duck.
Absolutely. We thought we'd be talking politics, but we have to talk about real life.
This is politics.
This is real life, and this is
Politics
real
of
life.
terror.
And by the way, this is why the leadership of this nation is so important. These are perilous and pivotal times, and we need a leader in the White House. This is why I am running for the presidency, who will stand with the citizens of this nation and take our country back. And that begins by telling the truth, and it also begins by standing for the character of this nation, which includes standing up for religious liberty, standing for life, telling the truth about life, and telling the truth to the American people about what's going on in our homeland.
Thank you for the straight
Thank
talk
you.
this morning.
Thank
Carly
you.
Fiorina,
Fiorina.
running for president.